Hi guys. So this is a presentation that's going to talk about inner wounds, psychic wounds that a lot of people with ADHD have. And it stems from what's called shaming language. So, due to the unfortunate and erroneous assumption that you could have performed to neurotypical standards if you had wanted to, adults in your life may have used these shaming approaches in an attempt to motivate you to do better or be better. And as a result, some of these language patterns have become a part of your internal script, perpetuating an internal wound. There are 4 types of inner wounds, and everyone, not just ADHDers, but everyone has all 4 wounds to some degree or another, but the mix will be kind of different from person to person. But competence in particular is a very common inner wound of people with neurodivergence, particularly ADHD. Different families / cultures practice different styles of shaming. There are 9 basic shaming languages. Most families, cultures engage in more than one style of shaming. And even within your family, different people in your family may use different styles of shaming. In becoming part of our own internal dialogue, though, the wound persists and unconsciously drives most of our behavior. The message in the language of shaming that we hear is, I'm only lovable if I'm ... And this sentence is completed by the wounds that you have sustained. So, for instance, I'm only lovable if I'm pretty, if I'm skinny, if I'm smart, or if I work harder. I'm only lovable if I'm more competent, better at managing money, better at my emotions, a more reliable daughter, sister, friend, etc. The toxicity in this language and internal dialogue is in the if, because it implies that you are not lovable just as you are. So let's talk about shame versus guilt. Guilt is the sense of feeling bad about something you've done, but you're still okay with yourself, as a baseline. And shame is something is wrong with who I am as a person. And if this is the case, really the only thing to do is to hide. The shaming language hands us a mask and says, put this on, be this person or else. So here are the shaming languages. Blame. Everything has to be someone's fault. So someone in the family becomes the scapegoat or the black sheep, and typically that's the person with the worst ADHD. Ridicule and sarcasm. This can be blatant or passive-aggressive, and those who are hurt by it are often called too sensitive, like they can't take a joke. Comparison making. Why can't you be more like so-and-so? Excessive control. So how you comb your hair, where you go, what career you should have, what you ate, etc. The message in this shaming language being, you're so incompetent, you need to be controlled. Imposition of perfection. This is just unattainable expectations regarding the identity or behavior you put forth in the world and how that reflects back on the family. Silence. Silent treatment, and which is kind of similar to control, and basically it's, we don't talk about that. And you're shamed for just even broaching certain subjects. Then there's image control, which is the outward image of all family members is very strictly enforced, including the company you keep. Physical language, which can be violence or just withholding of physical affection. And then finally there's favoritism. And this fails everyone because the favored children feel guilty and the rejected feel deprived. So then how do we deal with this inner wound of competence that we're just not good enough no matter how hard we try? We do that by shielding and soothing. And 90% of most people's energy is spent on shielding and soothing their inner wounds. So, shielding. There are more, but these tend to be the most common maladaptive shielding behaviors, because you can have adaptive shielding behaviors, but most of us kind of choose and learn our maladaptive ones first. But one is seeking money and prestige. And the underlying thing driving this here is that it's hard to argue with success. If we look successful from the outside, people won't nitpick us about our competence. And this can lead to living beyond our means, overspending, prioritizing immediate purchases that contribute to the appearance of having our shit together, over saving for the future. Perfectionism, striving to be perfect, to look perfect, to avoid criticism. This can lead to paralysis because if you can't do it perfectly, you may not do it at all. Number 3 is anger. If we can't achieve prestige, be perfect, we get angry, and we will keep people at a distance and always be on the offense to counter any anticipated attacks. And this will seep into all your relationships. And the thing about ADHD is, and you may have heard Russell Barkley say this at one point, but your friends and family will forgive your absent-mindedness, but they will not forgive your anger. Number 4 is silence and invisibility. Some of us prefer to avoid drawing any attention to ourselves. We attempt to blend into the background and not be noticed, and to camouflage in order to avoid any shame attacks. And the problem is this creates a lot of anxiety because it's not really a very good defense. And number 5 is people pleasing. And this can't work because you can't please everyone. And in an attempt to do so, you can lose your own identity as you try to be a different person for all the people in your life. Okay, so those are the shielding. Those are the ways that we try to shield ourselves from this inner wound that we just don't feel good enough. No matter how hard we try, we feel incompetent. And so then what are the soothing and numbing behaviors? Like, what do we do to calm that wound down? One is drugs, alcohol, and food. So, of course, these all fuel dopamine release, which we're driven towards just related to our ADHD alone, but add the inner wound to that, and there's a lot of risk to be using drugs and alcohol and food to soothe an inner discomfort. 2 is sex and relationships. And, this can be just like casual sex or ping-ponging from different relationships. And, it provides an immediate validation that we're worthy of love and affection. And then maybe we get out of there before they realize that, before they figure out who we really are. Number 3, overworking. And this pairs with the shielding of money and prestige. You become a workaholic, but it can impact your relationships and also your physical and mental health. Of course, all these affect your mental health, but number 4 is media overuse, and this can be social media. Really, it's just screens of any kind as a method of avoidance. You're just avoiding reality. And finally, overspending and shopping. And this, again, works towards money and prestige shielding behaviors, but it also works against the shield because it creates a lot of anxiety about your own financial stability. So shielding and soothing, again, this is a normal part of being a human being. Everyone does this. But learning to recognize what your own inner wounds are and the inner shaming language that you have adopted and what the maladaptive shielding and soothing behaviors are, this is the key. Because then you can start to supplement adaptive behaviors in place of the maladaptive ones, and this would be the goal. So, trying to catch that inner shame script when it's happening and correct it, because the deal is, it was all based on a misunderstanding. The thought was they could shame you into doing better because you could. when it turns out you couldn't. You were doing the best that you could, and you still are. So how do you assess this? You find out, okay, what are your inner wounds? What is your internal script? How are you shielding and soothing? Are those shielding and soothing tactics helpful? Are they working? What could you do instead? If you were your own parent right now, knowing what you know about the great misunderstanding, what would you say to your inner child? Would you say something like, hey, how are you? Are you hurt? Are you scared? Are you angry? What are you afraid of? Do you ever feel conditional love from me? If so, what are the specific conditions? What do you need me to do differently to convey unconditional love to you? This is you asking yourself these questions. How do you convey unconditional love to yourself? You are worthy of love just as you are. You are worthy of unconditional love. You have the power to soothe and heal that wounded inner child.